1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Well, hello. It is a beautiful Monday, even though people look down and miserable, and I suppose a lot of that has to do with a late Steeler game and a loss. People look tired and miserable on the bus. It was so funny. It was just sort of like, ugh. It was palpable. Do you ever remember where you learned a word? Palpable. Every time I do say it, I realize where I learned it. And I learned it from Shakespeare, and I learned it from Hamlet. Because when you read Shakespeare in high school and or college, I mean, you were always having to go down to the footnotes and find out what that word meant and what this word meant and blah, 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 right? You did a lot of that. And every once in a while, one of them would stick. And palpable stuck for me. I don't know why. The phrase was, it's at the end of Hamlet. Does anybody know what it is? It's way at the end. It's at the very, very end. There is a duel going on in which the stage will be littered with dead people, which often happens at the end of Shakespeare plays. And I don't know who even says it. But I believe it's when Hamlet is dueling. And whoever is doing the play-by-play, because there was sort of a play-by-play, he says at one point, a hit, a palpable hit. That's it. Now, why would that one, I don't know why, but to this day, whenever I hear the word palpable, a hit, a palpable hit. If I were to think more about it, there's a lot of other words that came into my vocabulary because of Mr. Shakespeare. And we do learn words somehow, right? And sometimes the very event of acquiring them is memorable to you for whatever reason. I don't know why that is. And if anybody goes and looks at Hamlet now and finds out that nowhere does it say a hit, a palpable hit, I'll be so miserable. Because, memory is an odd thing, too. Oh, gosh. Okay. If you think I'm avoiding the news, you're absolutely right. God. Whenever the Middle East blows up like it is right now, I find it very difficult to even look. And I guess it's because I know there is nothing but horror everywhere. And even worse, that it will come to nothing. It's like some awful dream that you have throughout your life. When it starts up again, even in your unconscious state, you say, oh, no, no, not this. And there it is again. And you know that when you wake up, you will wake up in a sweat, and that there is no change. It just is the same thing. Awful. With no movement in it. There's no purpose to it, except this just unleashing of mutual destruction. It is so maddening. I can't remember who I was listening to, and this is before this latest conflagration between Gaza and Israel, maybe a week or two ago. And somebody was saying that they look at the Israeli-Palestinian thing and they think it's insoluble. This is clearly one of those things. It's like that, my recurring nightmare, that you just can't. I mean, the best minds of the century have tried. People have, even statesmen have died. Anwar Sadat, Yitzhak Rabin, great men on both sides of the divide have given their lives in an effort to move things forward. And you think it just, after a while, when something like this goes on for so long, it gets in the blood. It becomes literally a blood feud. And that blood is in the bones. And how do you resolve that? How, in the name of God, do you resolve that? And then the other person who was party to whatever conversation I was listening to, which I cannot remember right now, said, well, I had always thought that too, but then look at Ireland. And yeah, look at Ireland. Because that looked like one of those things that was never going to resolve, right? And that went on for hundreds and hundreds of years and was truly a blood feud. And then somehow, and with a great deal of help from the outside, in fact, from the United States, George Mitchell, Bill Clinton, there was a lot of whatever. They stopped. So, I don't dare to dream it because I don't personally see that happening. I don't see any positive end to this, and it's why George Romney, remember him, by the way? Oh, not George Romney, that was the father. Ha! See, I already forgot him. Mitt. Jeez. Yeah, remember when Mitt Romney was overheard saying, I don't think this is something he said out loud. This is another one of those things that we learned because, what, wasn't it? He said that he thought, I think it was in that same speech where he did the 47%, where he told that crowd, I just don't see any, there ain't no win there for anybody, let alone for us to even involve ourselves. So, I would sort of, you could tell he absolutely thought, can't. Barack Obama has muttered things that sound vaguely like that himself. Like, well, I don't blame anybody for not wanting to wade into what has proven to be near impossible, even when it looks like somebody's made progress, like Jimmy Carter, like Bill Clinton, even when there are handshakes and there are... The problem with it is that the militants on both sides, and there are plenty of them on both sides, rule the day. So whenever someone tries to find common ground, whenever some unbelievably courageous person rises up on either side and takes on the militants on their side, as did Anwar Sadat, as did Yitzhak Rabin, their own side kills them. The fact that Sadat was killed by Egyptians and Rabin by an Israeli tells you all you need to know about why some of us who look on feel nothing but despair. The other thing I was trying to think of is why, whenever these two parties come to blows, actual blows, as opposed to, the usual verbal assaults, the world becomes immediately transfixed. When that is not the case when other people come to blows. I mean, Anderson Cooper has not been seen in Damascus, reporting breathlessly every explosion that occurs near him. The horror that is going on just to the north, you could walk it. It's a long walk, but you could walk it. That's anyone who's ever been to the Middle East. One of the things that you're blown away by is how all of these countries are sitting on top of each other. How from the balcony of my hotel room on the Red Sea, I can look to the right and actually see, I think it was Egypt to my right. I could look straight ahead. There's Jordan right across the water. I could look that away. I saw all those countries when I was stuck in this little teeny sliver that's called Israel. They're all right there. So in Syria right now, the number of people killed in Syria yesterday, I don't know this to be true, but I'm willing to bet it. The number of people killed in Syria yesterday was greater than the number of people killed in Israel and Gaza. And that number was very big the day before that, yada, 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 going back weeks, months. But we don't get pictures. We don't see the howling people. We don't see the carnage. And you know why? Because Syria doesn't let the world in to witness. Israel, as it is often said, is and has been the only democracy, although now we supposedly have some others in the Middle East, because of the Arab Spring. And because of that, because it has an unfettered press, and it does, it's a very, very interesting thing to bother to read the Israeli media, because it's all over the place. They are a country much like ours in that regard. And so when they go to war, Anderson Cooper's invited. The BBC's invited. Everybody's invited. I'm sure the Israelis would rather they not be there because the pictures that come out are not helpful to them from a public relations point of view. But it is in their DNA that there is this free flow of information. And the Palestinians have learned how to use that to their benefit, without a doubt. So we all get to sit and watch and be emotionally involved. There's very little thought that goes on when you're watching the coverage of this kind of thing. It's all emotion. It is all so awful. There is not a positive to be had. I don't know that it's helpful. I don't know. Because there's no other war that we ever get so up close and personal with, ongoing. Even though we've become very used to doing that. Even our own wars, we don't let media get as close as the Israelis allow. We do not. Oh, yes, we embed journalists. Just ask General Petraeus. We embed them. But we also, by embedding them, sort of own them. I happened to read this morning something that is a totally different take on this whole thing, which I found interesting, because it's the take of an apolitical person. It's just the take of an American who happens to be there right now, who you know her name, and I'm still trying to think of who she does her reporting for. Dahlia Lethwick. She covers the Supreme Court for someone. I was going to say NPR, but it isn't. So maybe it is. I don't know. Anyway, Dahlia Lethwick is in Jerusalem with her husband and 2 young sons, and has been there for some time because she's on sabbatical, because she's writing a book about the Supreme Court, which is her expertise. And apparently her parents live in Israel, and she thought this year off would be a great opportunity for her and her sons and her husband to get away, to go to another place. She wanted her sons, who are I think 7 and 9, to have the same kind of experience she had, because she as a child ended up living for a year in Israel when her father was a visiting professor at one of the universities there. So anyway, she's been there for about 3 months. And so she wrote this. And I'm not going to read it all. Definitely not. But there was something about just what she's saying. Because she's experiencing it on one level, and her children, her sons are, and her parents are. And of course, obviously, she's got friends and family there, but she also has colleagues who are covering it there and in Gaza. So this is somebody who's much closer to it all. And in part, she says this. She talks about the fact that 35 years ago, as a child, she was in Israel because her father had a job there for the year. And she says, it was the best year of my life. After 35 years ago this week, Anwar Sadat addressed the Israeli Knesset in an unprecedented and historic move toward establishing peace between Israel and Egypt. She writes, my little brother and I stayed up half the night making an enormous Egyptian flag. We colored it in with pencils and crayons, and we trekked up to the Knesset with it, where we stood on the sidewalk with throngs of Israelis waiting for Sadat's motorcade to arrive. Our flag was so huge we took up 3 feet of sidewalk. My indelible memory of that day is that President Sadat smiled and waved at the 2 kids with the massive Egyptian flag as he drove past. Sadat said in his remarks that day that Israel had a right to exist. And we really believed he had made history that day. We had the flag to prove it. I mean, of course, I need not add here that he was assassinated not long after. And then Dahlia Lethwick writes, I didn't come back to Jerusalem to be in a war. I didn't come back to write about Middle East politics. I came because I needed to take some time away to write my book, and because my parents live here, and we wanted to spend a year with them. I came because we desperately wanted to give our sons, who are 7 and 9, a year in which their world became bigger and more complicated, since everything in their lives up until now had been measured out in equal units of comfort and Legos. I'll skip forward here. As much as I hate to say it, the harrowing accounts of burnt-out basements and baby shoes on each side of this conflict are not helpful. They don't constitute a conversation. Counting and photographing and tweeting injured children on each side is not a dialogue. Scoring your own side's suffering is a powerful way to avoid fixing the problems. And trust me when I tell you that everyone, absolutely everyone, is suffering and sad. And yet being sad is not fixing the problems either. One good lesson I am learning this week is to shut up and listen. Because the only way to cut through the mutual agony here is to find people who have solutions and to hear what they have to say. Bombing the other side into oblivion is no more a solution than counting your dead children in public. The best thing about shutting up and listening, you eventually lose the impulse to speak. Please don't judge. Work toward solutions. Because everyone on every side of this is desperate. This isn't a way to live, and we all know it. Last night I was with a group of women in Jerusalem, and there was a teenage girl crying, and I assumed it was over some guy. It's always a guy. It wasn't. She was headed to the army today. You want to hear what it's like here? It's fucking sad. Everyone I know is sad. My kids don't care who started it. And the little boys in Isawiya, the Arab village I see out my window, they don't care either. I haven't met a single Israeli who is happy about this. They know this fixes nothing. The one thing we learned this week is how quickly humans can come to normalize anything. But the hopelessness seeps into your bones. I am worried about our friends here who are being called up. I am worried about our friends here who are war correspondents. I am worried about terrified children in Gaza. I'm worried about how I will explain to my sons why we are staying. But I'm more worried about what I would tell them if we left. I'm crazy worried about my parents who live in the South, where 1,400 rockets have been fired. I am worried about how this can possibly ever end if just tweeting about peace is an intentional act of aggression. So tonight, I will tell my kids about Sadat's visit 35 years ago, just as we told them last month about Yitzhak Rabin. I hope they understand what I'm trying to tell them, because, forgive me, what they think matters more to me than what you think. People who tell me you can't teach children about peace in a war zone are wrong. We have nothing but peace left to talk about. That's Dahlia Lithwick, American in Jerusalem. Huh?
She's Canadian.
You think she's Canadian? Oh, you looked her up?
Yeah.
She's not an American?
She's She lives in the States.
Canadian is the same as American. It's essentially the same as American, just with better health care. Sorry. And she lives in the U.S., as so many Canadians do. Oh, dear God. Emails. Oh, and this harkens back to palpable. Ray, you're always there for me. Ray writes, as Hamlet and Laertes, I thought it was, yes, fence. Hamlet touches Laertes and calls a point, but Laertes protests, and they go to the judge of the match, who agrees with Hamlet. A hit! Ha ha! Ooh, I missed the word very. A hit! A very palpable hit. There, thank God, something I actually remember almost right. Okay, and then Ray on Ireland's The Troubles. Lynn, the Irish settled the fighting when, after 9/11, the USA threatened to cut off the money being raised to fund Sinn Féin and the IRA. As long as the leaders see a cash stream in fighting, they will be happy to spend the lives of the common people to fight an endless war. Endless fighting equals endless money. Well, how are you going to stop that? Because one of the things we found out with this new Gaza fighting and with the fact that the Gaza now, Hamas has much better weaponry, is that they're being funded and given those weapons from Iran, which one way or the other really intends to wipe Israel off the map. I don't know what you do. I don't know what the hell you do. But I'll take Dahlia's advice. I think we shut up and listen. It's fascinating to me to see how whenever these things start up, how we all run to our appointed corners, harden our hearts to some of the misery, and open it to other parts of the misery, and walk around with our imposed ideas of what is right, what is wrong. I mean, this is what happens in these ongoing blood feuds in which you take up sides. I don't know. Well, that is all I have, I think, to say. And let's get a break in and return with a change of topic, if you don't mind.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
Go to bergbargains.com for great deals from the 2012 Best of Pittsburgh winners. This week only, get discounts up to 70% on admission to all Carnegie museums for the holidays. bergbargains.com, Pittsburgh's exclusive e-commerce mall. bergbargains.com.
Winter has arrived and it's cold outside, so get to Little's for all your UGG needs. Little's has Uggs for men, women, and children to stay warm with shearling-lined boots, shoes, and slippers. And don't forget to get your hats, gloves, scarves, and more. All available at Little's Shoes. Bring the entire family to view one of the largest in-store UGG shops in the U.S. Little's Shoes, Pittsburgh's largest family shoe store, 5850 Forbes Avenue in Squirrel Hill.
You're listening to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Once again, here's Lynn Cullen.
You know that shop? Hello. Here we are back. Okay, now let's see. I read some interesting stuff over the weekend. Oh, here was my favorite. This came from a friend, and it was the best tweet sent after the election. And there were a lot of them, but I love this one. And it came from a group called United Against Homophobia, but here's the tweet. It all makes sense now. Gay marriage legalized on the same day as marijuana. It makes perfect biblical sense. Leviticus chapter 20, verse 13. Is that how they say it? Chapter and verse? Chapter 20, verse 13. Quote, A man who lays with another man should be stoned. It all makes sense now. Gay marriage legalized on the same day as marijuana. A man who lays with another man should be stoned. Well, gee, so our interpretation all these years has just been wrong. You see, I mean, the Bible can be, read so many ways. I hope to pass that on to any evangelical ministers you might know or anybody else, because that is extraordinarily helpful. I truly loved it. And this, another great bon mot. Two of them, actually, that I have here. These are both big, long things. I'm going to read one line from each. Two sentences from one from the other. This is in a piece in the New Yorker by Adam Gopnik called Military Secrets, in which he writes about the Petraeus scandal in a very, very cleverly. And here I said almost the same thing I said the first part. I said the first part on the TV show just Friday night. I said it. But I didn't say this second part. This is good. Here's what he says. Benghazi is a tragedy in search of a scandal. And that's what I said. I said the Republicans, it's an outrage what they're doing with Benghazi. That is a tragedy that they're trying to politicize, creating it, making it into some kind of a huge scandal. Really. So he says, Benghazi is a tragedy in search of a scandal. The Petraeus affair is a scandal in search of a tragedy. Because it is absurd. And I mean, it's why you can have so much fun with it. Because it's farcical in so many ways. And yet, obviously, if we sober up, not that, because there are some obviously serious issues raised by this particular affair, and one of which, and he goes on to quote Philip Roth in Portnoy's complaint about lust, because clearly that's what's sort of at work in the Petraeus scandal. And so this puts the lie to, I was only going to read one sentence from this because, wait, this is another one. Petraeus and his defenders and attackers keep referring to his poor judgment. But if the affair had anything to do with judgment, it never would have happened. Desire, I would say lust, is not subject to the language of judiciousness. And if it were, it wouldn't be desire. It wouldn't be lust. And lust has a language all its own. The point of lust, not to put too fine a point on it, is that it lures us to do dumb stuff. And the fact that dumb stuff gets done is continuing proof of the power of lust. There it is in a nutshell. However, I must say, as I have said before, that the male of the species is definitely more vulnerable to lust. They just seem almost incapable of fending it off. Women are much better at it, although we're quite capable, too, of throwing ourselves into its tempting delights. And letting what's the part of the brain that's supposed to function like a Homo sapiens more, is it the cerebral cortex? You know, that just like goes out to lunch, and we're totally reptilian, you know. Whatever. Okay. And also, another unbelievably dead on, gets it right. This is from Gary Wills. He is a professor of history at Northwestern University, my alma mater, and also writes a lot about Catholicism because he's a very Catholic, Jesuit. He's one smart cookie. I believe he has a Pulitzer or two. Gary Wills. Anyway, he, writing about Mitt Romney's demise. Actually, he did a piece in which he talks about what happens. I mean, this is sort of on the, back into the Shakespearean realm. What happens to a man who reaches so high and then falls to the earth? What happens to a man who puts himself out there and the people turn their backs? What happens to somebody who is defeated in such a public way, on such a huge stage? How can such men continue? How do they pick themselves up and move on and continue to be somebody who is a positive force in the nation and the world that they had hoped to lead? And Wills he looks at how some of the men did it. He talks about the late George McGovern, who was humiliated. He talks about what a good man he was. He talks about that McGovern cried, picked himself up, went back into the Senate, and worked at the very things that he had always cared about, mostly hunger issues, mostly food stuff. And he worked and worked and worked until his dying day. He worked for 30, 40 more years. And showed that he was, in many ways, a great and principled man. Jimmy Carter, humiliating defeat, humiliating presidency, picked himself up. And whether you like his politics or not, he continued and has, even though he's an old man now, to work his principles on the world stage. Barry Goldwater did the same after a humiliating defeat. John Kerry has gone back to the Senate, right? And has takes a while to find your voice, to feel, who you are, to lick your wounds, whatever. That would be a loss you'd never get over. Al Gore, it was after his defeat in which he won more votes, then that would be the hardest of all. The people said, "We want you." The Electoral College said, "Sorry." And the Supreme Court said, "Sorry." And he went on with the thing that was driving him so much, and that was climate change. And he ends up winning what? The Nobel Peace Prize? these men kept on with the very principles that had pushed them into daring to think that they could be the president of the United States. And Gary Wills tries to imagine Mitt Romney. What happens to him now? I'm not going to, as I said, I'm just taking this down to 2 sentences because it is brutal. It's brutal. And I think it's dead on. Because what would be what Mitt Romney then picks up and starts to do? Because one thing we saw is he was willing to throw any principle that he had overboard in the hopes that it would help him achieve his ambition. So that the Massachusetts healthcare law, which was the mentor of Obamacare, he disavowed it. He disavowed everything he had ever done. He disavowed the stance he took on almost every single issue. So how will he dust himself off? The party who allowed him to be its standard bearer, who roundly cheered him in Tampa. Was it Tampa or Charlotte? I forget who was where. Doesn't matter. Anyway, they now are falling all over themselves, excoriating him. So if he had won, they would be singing his praises, but he lost. So now all of a sudden every word out of his mouth was an outrage. Why didn't they say that when he uttered the stuff? Oh, they're all upset now about what? His latest thing about Obama, got the election because he bought it from people with gifts. Well, that's no different than what he said with the 47% and what the Republicans have been saying constantly. And they think that by acting outraged that Romney would say such a thing, that the rest of us don't know that that's what they subscribe to as well? Anyway, so Romney, sometimes the guy who loses becomes sort of the elder statesman of his party. This party doesn't want him. They won't even invite him to, I don't know, anything. I mean, they don't want to see him. So I think he's persona non grata in the Republican Party. What's he going to do? Well, I think what he'll do, although somebody has said he could make himself available to help things now, make himself available to the Obama administration and say, is there something I can do here that will help move things forward with this or that or blah, blah, blah? I would be glad to. That would be something. But Gary Wills doesn't think he's going to do that. Gary Wills thinks he'll go back to doing what he knows how to do, which is accumulating wealth. He's not going to become an elder statesman. The campaign he ran, in which he essentially dissed 47% of the American people, in which he repudiated so much of his past work in the political sphere. Gary Wills says this, and this is the last line of some great tragedy, I guess. Although I don't know if Mitt Romney can really be a tragic figure because there's not enough core there. so that you really weep at his downfall. Gary Wills says this: what can be worse than to sell your soul and find it not valuable enough to get anything for it? Wow. Wow. There it is. Isn't it? That he just nailed it. And how do you recover from that? He was willing to sell everything he had ever said he thought or knew or believed. He was willing to do it all because he wanted that job. He wanted that. And he sold his soul and got nothing. Wills says his friends, if he has them, his friends can only hope that he is too morally obtuse to realize that crushing truth. Losing elections, that's one thing. But the greater loss, the real loss for him, has been the loss of honor. I don't know if that could fit on that guy's tombstone. That's about as, there it is. What can be worse than to sell your soul and find it not valuable enough to get anything for it? Isn't that it? Let's get our second break in, and we'll be back.
Stick around for more with Lynn Cullen live after this.
This is the sound of a flat-screen television hurled off a building. Now the new bike your kid wants. These are the things you could have, all cast into oblivion. Because when you throw away money on wasted electricity, you throw away everything you could have bought with it. Use Energy Star light bulbs and appliances, and you could save hundreds of dollars a year. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ad Council.
Pittsburgh City Paper's special holiday pullout is available now. Pick up one today for listings and information on holiday festivities throughout the burg, plus the Sessions, Lincoln, and News of the Weird. Pittsburgh City Paper available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com and on your smartphone at citypapermobile.com.
Now, it's back to Lynn Cullen live at pghcitypaper.com.
Okay. Ooh. Let me find... I wanted to share something with you, but I don't know who wrote it because I didn't... Michael Wolff. Okay. Anyway. So, this is another sort of requiem or postscript or whatever to the elections. A lot of people have been suggesting that Fox News, right-wing radio, which had appeared to be a positive, a plus for the Republican Party. I mean, after all, what party had essentially its own huge network that attracted a ton of viewers, and what party essentially owned AM radio, where you couldn't drive anywhere in this nation without being, I mean, no matter where you tuned, it was just right wing, right wing, right wing, right wing, right wing. And you know, personally, I can attest to this. Where even if in a city there might be two radio stations, an FM station, an AM station, and they're both talk, there's no place for a voice that is not parroting that kind of politics. And this in a country in which the Democrats have won the national vote in 5 of the last 6 elections. It's a very odd business model, isn't it? And I've always wondered, so how the hell does that work? When most of the audience doesn't even believe this crap, why would you not offer them something they believe in? Well, this guy writes a column on why Fox News and that talk radio works. And it's very smart. And it has nothing to do with the people who are making the money. Rupert Murdoch and Clear Channel and all these other characters. They're people. I know, they're corporations, people, same thing. It's a business model. And it has been extraordinarily lucrative, but they don't give a damn the impact it has on the nation and its politics, and how it has helped to make us into the divided nation we are, because it has. When we wonder, where are these Republicans living? What kind of reality are they tuned into? Where do they get? It's like we're in different planets. Well, that's because there is this other planet. And it's brought to you by these huge corporate media conglomerates that have found an extraordinarily lucrative and winning formula. And here's what this guy, what did I say his name was? Michael Wolff or something, says. This is in today's USA Today. And here's what they know. Right-wing media would be vastly less interesting if it decided to rely mainly on the more cautious views of fiscal conservatives. In other words, if it amplified the voices of more moderate, pragmatic, realistic, science-appreciating members of the Republican Party or the right. But it's in the business of creating a sideshow that attracts an audience. And I've tried to tell this to people for 20 years. Nobody hears me. Instead, he says, it makes all the money because it has been able to arouse excitement and provoke conflict, which creates a highly telegenic and mediaized conversation. Right-wing extroverts and proselytizers are desperate to perform on it and for it. And this programming, while it has galvanized a huge audience, it has polarized the nation. And here's what he says. In media terms, in the world that these media bigwigs live in, that's good. That's good. You know why? Because it absolutely, tightly defines its audience. And programmers know that when you can get an audience that is totally easily definable and is loyal as hell and listens constantly and does what you tell it to do, that then you can turn to advertisers and say, look what I got for you. Look what I got for you. Conflict, polarization, are really good for business. So now that we have some of the more pragmatic and chastened members of the Republican Party coming out and saying, look, we've got to change our rhetoric on immigration, on drug policy, on gay marriage. Blah, blah, blah. Well, don't expect Fox to. Don't expect Limbaugh, Hannity, Beck, any of them to, because that goes against their best interests. Damn the people. Damn the country. If the and he goes on to say, and this is interesting. Yeah, we got a caller. Okay, come on in. Hello.
Yes, this is Clarence from Canonsburg.
Clarence from Canonsburg. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm just sitting here trying to figure out why I'm not rich. I've been saying what he just said for, like you said, 20 years. There's nothing an advertiser wants more than someone who calls themselves a ditto head.
That's what they want.
Yeah. You know, you
they
sell
don't
them a bunch of stuff, they say ditto,
right.
Then you sell them, I think it was Snapple that first made Limbaugh his money.
An advertiser does not want somebody of an independent spirit who thinks for him or herself, who
somebody who's
questions, skeptical. They don't want it. That's never a target audience. No. So these yahoos are the perfect audience, and you will not see these corporations and these money grubbers letting go of them anytime soon.
Yeah. I mean, and how do you convince somebody who's a ditto head that you're being played, you're being suckered, you're being snookered for your money?
Yeah.
You know? Go buy gold. You remember, everybody was like, hey, gold. The gold was the big thing for, what's his name there?
Limbaugh, I think. No, Beck.
Beck, yeah. Buy gold.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And it's like, dude, you're being played. No, you're just saying that because you're a liberal. Demonize the liberal, demonize the skeptics. Call yourself a ditto head, and you got an audience that any advertiser would buy.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Isn't that
so maybe liberals should start advertising on conservative radio.
You know, I think of them as they are close to traitorous.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's some kind of a national contract that all citizens should, sign on to, it is that you do not actively try to harm the nation. And their business model actively does just that. And now they've taken down, or are starting to take down, one of the major parties who went to bed with them. Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
They're more, I can't think of a better word than patriotic towards capitalism than they are towards the nation. That's right. Yeah. They don't see a difference there. Yeah, they don't see a difference. It's all about the money. It's always about the money. Yeah. Well, that's a deal with the devil. It's a deal with the devil that the right wing has made. And I don't think they can now shut up the Fox Newses and these AM types. They're going to continue. What I'm starting to see, it's not from the media, but from the religious right. Because they're starting to think differently, about how much they should play a role in politics. They're going to start, saying, okay, we tried to get political, let's just leave it. They might leave again? Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah. Get out of politics and, go back into your churches and mosque and whatever and try to change society from there. Right, and take the Catholic, and take the Catholic bishops with you and let them all get back to studying their Bible a little more closely and work it from there, and we'll all be happier. Exactly. Thank you, Clarence. You're welcome. Poor soul. Have a good day. Bye. 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 The guy does point out, though, that, they're under pressure. Fox and all these guys now are under pressure because if the national consensus is, in fact, starting to tilt back to a more liberal place, which it appears to be,
And advertisers begin to notice that too and get nervous about being associated with maybe these guys who might not quite be respectable anymore, that they might start losing a little bit. It could be that the sense of extremism and homophobia and all that kind of stuff will become something that major advertisers don't want to go near. And that's happened a few times in the past, right? They go away for a while from one of these shows when something totally outrageous is said, that everybody agrees is totally outrageous, but then they slink back because there's money. And they say that Rupert Murdoch is under pressure from his own children who will and his wife, who are uncomfortable with Fox News. Because you know why? Because they're educated and they're not fools. Maybe. But this guy says, but Rupert, because of Fox's incredible profits, he'll probably withstand any discomfort coming from his family at the Thanksgiving dinner table. So we'll see. It is doubtful that these right-wing media outlets will start tacking to the center, because if you look at what the center looks like in media, look at CNN. Its ratings are consistently going down because the center can't put on as good a show. And herein, of course, we have some complicity. We like the sideshows. We like the screaming, the ranting, the take no prisoners, the black and white. And so we become part of this ugly picture. Anyway, there you have it. The business model that has made Fox News so extraordinarily lucrative, and Rush Limbaugh rich, and all the other ditto heady people rich, is a formula that has consistently worked, that will probably continue to work, and it's probably not going anywhere. And it'll be interesting to watch the Republican Party try to somehow, I don't know how, pull away from it. Somewhat. It'll be interesting to see. All right, that's it. That'd be the show for today. Thank you so very much. I think my sister is joining us tomorrow. I certainly hope so. And Chris Potter will on Wednesday. And then I, like so many of you, will take Thursday and Friday off. Okay? See you tomorrow.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.